Hello, guys. Welcome to Critical Thinking and Practical Reasoning. We are on Unit 2 discussing varieties and anatomy of argument. Today, our session will be detailing on sound and unsound arguments. The aim of this session is to help students recognize sound arguments, state what a sound argument is, construct a sound argument, discuss the two elements of sound argument, and make a possible difference between a sound and unsound argument. What is a sound argument? Soundness is actually the big word out of which we may actually do the dichotomy of a sound and unsound argument. Now, the soundness of an argument is determined by the truthfulness of the propositions. That includes the premise and the conclusion. First, to test for soundness, the argument must be a deductive and valid argument. And we can be sure that from our previous sessions, students have been given a better understanding of what deductive arguments are. We've also discussed what valid arguments are, right? So you should note that the first thing you should note for for an argument to be sound, or for you to test for soundness, you should note that the argument must be a deductive argument and must be valid as well. Second, all propositions in the argument must be true for the argument to be sound. So all the propositions, that includes premises and the conclusion, has to be true in real life situations for the argument to be sound. Now, granted that only one is false, the argument becomes unsound. So granted that only one is false, or at least one proposition being false, makes the argument unsound. So you may have a list of propositions. Let's say you have 5 propositions for an argument where one is a conclusion but the other 4 are premises. If you have at least one of them which has its truthfulness in real life situation being false, then it becomes an unsound argument. If you have 2, 3 more, it's still unsound. But then when all the propositions are true in real life situations, such an argument is considered to be a valid and sound argument. Let's look at the examples for sound and unsound argument. So sound argument: all squares are figures. No circle is a square. So a square table is a figure. Note that this is first a deductive argument, and this argument is valid. You can see that the conclusion, which says so a square table is a figure, can be deduced from the first premise, especially because the first premise gives enough grounds to draw the conclusion that a square table is a figure. So this is a valid argument. However, the second premise seems to be a redundant premise for the test of validity. But note that with soundness, we just want to affirm 2 criteria. And the first one is to check whether it's a valid and deductive argument. And of course, the example we have here is deductive and valid. The second criteria is to look out whether all the premises are true in real life situations. So let's look at the first one. All squares are figures. It is true that all squares are figures. No circle is a square. It is true that no circle is a square. And the conclusion says, so a square table is a figure. And of course, in real life, a square table is a figure. So this argument is considered as a sound argument. On the other hand, we have an example for unsound argument, which says my birthday is 6 days after my sister's birthday. My birthday is on the 12th. Therefore, my sister's birthday is on the 18th. You can see here that this argument you have here, not necessarily testing for real life situation, but if considerably, we may permit it that in real life, my birthday is 6 days after my sister's birthday, and we can hold that as true. And my birthday is on the 12th, and hold that as true. My sister's birthday being on the 18th will make an invalid argument. And of course, you should note that invalid arguments don't test for soundness, so they are automatically considered as unsound argument. But then, so it just happens that we have a false premise in this situation, and that will be from in the conclusion, because if you are considering the first premise as true and the second premise as true, the third proposition, which is the conclusion, will be false, and that breaks the second criteria for sound argument, where you need all true propositions to make a sound argument. Hence, this argument becomes unsound. This session has enlightened students on the types of valid arguments, that is sound and unsound. Aside validity, facticity is the hallmark of soundness. It's great having your time. Thank you. We shall meet another time. Bye.